I'm always saying to my friends in Taiwan, don't become another Ukraine. Don't become a battleground. And what I say in all seriousness, and I hope they understand, to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. Just don't count on the U.S. for your security. For your security, count on your brains, your culture, your decency, your negotiations. Don't count on weapon systems of the U.S., on military alliances. This will never keep anyone safe.
喺睇片之前，大家記得分享、讚好同訂閱卓見名家，最緊要撳埋呢個鐘仔，咁你就唔會錯過我哋嘅最新影片。
Hong Kong has outstanding educational institutions, and this is absolutely at the core of an innovation economy. Hong Kong has a neighborhood which is extraordinarily important. The Greater Bay Area is, to my mind, the organizing unit that puts together all of the systems that are needed. Because Hong Kong has never been, it was with textiles, of course, but in long ago days, it's never been a major manufacturing center, and it won't be because of its land and density. It's always going to be the lead service sector. Services mean a lot of things these days. Services mean innovation, services mean education, services mean tourism, services mean business headquarters, services mean all sorts of things. Hong Kong will not be heavy industry. It's not going to be a major industrial or mining or agricultural center. But the GBA, to my mind, is absolutely unique in the world because you have 70 million people in a close proximity, all rapidly interconnected by fast rail and by other transport, that is a production, world-leading production center. It is a world-leading education center. It's a world-leading financial center. It's again a wonderful environment and touristic center as well. Something I don't understand well, when I travel from Hong Kong to Shenzhen, get out of the car, get in line, do all the difficulties, it's a hassle, and it is not exactly seamless. And while I know that's a lot of complications involved, I'd like somehow on the business and finance side a little bit more seamless connections. Again, I'm a guest, and I'm both ignorant and don't want to be rude or misunderstood. But I never sensed the strong Shenzhen-Hong Kong connection that I think would be a huge benefit to both, except in the last couple of years. Because now Hong Kong campuses are starting to open up in Shenzhen. Of course, people are spending their weekends in Shenzhen, I understand, and doing all sorts of things, which is good. And I go to Huawei and I go to other companies in Shenzhen, and I find them amazing, frankly. One of the life-changing experiences to go to Huawei every year because it's truly an absolutely remarkable company, which is why the U.S. government hates it so much. Because it's successful, because it is competitive, because it's low cost, because it thinks ahead, all the things that the U.S. really doesn't want to see other people doing. But all of that means that Hong Kong will be a service economy, and a wonderful one, but of new kinds. Again, higher education, innovation, many things. But use the neighborhood, because the neighborhood gives a scale And Silicon Valley, frankly, is nothing compared to GBA, honestly, because Silicon Valley has some wonderful universities, and it's got some big design tech companies. It doesn't produce anything, and it's not going to produce anything. And so you have something, and it's not a financial center except for VC. It's not a global financial center, so you have something much bigger, much more complete. It's an offering, and by the way, the world needs the packaging. Don't reinvent this every time. I was in Central Asia. They want sustainable development. I say, go get help from China. I mean, my true statement to government officials in Central Asia was what they want, one of the things they want, is to produce solar in their deserts and export to Europe. And they call it the Trans-Caspian Corridor. Okay, where is the solar going to come from? It's going to come from Longyi and other Chinese companies, for sure. Where's the financing going to come from? To a large extent from Hong Kong, okay? And from Belt and Road. But my suggestion to them was to make the plan, go to China, get the partnership, and then go to Europe and say, look, we're halfway. China's doing this side, you do the other side. And be the interconnector to actually bring Europe and China together so that Europe doesn't have this crazy idea that the global gateway is somehow in competition with the Belt and Road. It's a partnership. Global gateway, to my view, goes west. It goes east to Samarkand. The Belt and Road can go west to Samarkand, meet in the middle, and you have a happy Eurasia. That's my recommendation. Wall Street is not financing the developing countries. I won't name the name, but one of the top financiers in Wall Street said to me a few years ago, I don't know if he'd still say it, but he said, Jeff, don't expect me to finance your friends, meaning the developing countries. It was a pretty crude statement by somebody that manages some trillions of dollars. I was not happy, but he was expressing a real view. London, strangely, is not doing this, though it could have done this in a different time. But it's got so many problems that it has lost the lead on this. So there are a few capital markets around the world, a few financial centers around the world that have the potential to play a major role in development finance and in sustainable development finance. I think you're the best placed, actually, of all of them. And what that means is that the real novelty is, like you just said, pay attention to ASEAN, pay attention to the African Union, pay attention to places that have not been the normal site of investment, because those places are looking for solutions right now. And the solutions they need are partly technical solutions, they're partly production facilities, they're partly the industrial solutions, and they will need financing. And to my mind, you have many advantages in that. First, of course, the things we've been talking about of GBA. Second is China's foreign policy more generally, which is directed and will increasingly be directed towards the emerging and developing regions of the world. Third is the great gift of Donald Trump, who has said, okay, I don't care about those things, you take over China. So he's handed China the whole global leadership. If China had done this maybe in a different context, the US would have said, who are you to intervene on this? We lead sustainable development. It's exactly the opposite right now, which is, we don't like this agenda. It happens that the other 192 governments of the UN do. Good, take it. So this is another element of this. And all of this seems to me to mean that you have the chance to put together a package that says, yeah, I'm going to Hong Kong because we're financing this great fast rail which is going to connect us and the Caspian corridor, and of course the Hong Kong universities have done the greatest analysis of this, and this is going to add 3.2% of GDP in the next 10 years, and you can put together the whole package. Dubai cannot do this, though it would like to. Singapore can't do this because the physical investment is going to come from China. That's true. And that's important to understand. One more point, in my opinion, is the Belt and Road Initiative. It's my favorite single foreign policy initiative that there is in the area of sustainable development. It's well motivated. It's getting better in design. It's a lot of real money, by the way. It needs to be improved in the financing, actually, in many particular ways. When it was launched in 2014, it was not designed. The main design of BRI was you ask the counterpart government, what would you like? We want a stadium. We want rail to the president's village. We want a power plant. Okay, we do that. That was how it started. Now it's becoming a lot more strategic. Green, digital, focused on transformation. But that's a big offer for the world, and that is something for Hong Kong also to co-finance with. And so I think that there's a whole package that can be put together. Clearly, the main issue for the world and for China and for everybody is to stay out of a major conflict and get these conflicts down, because if we can avoid a major conflict, even the trade wars won't stop this process. So I'm most worried about conflict. And we've got hot conflicts in Ukraine and in the Middle East. And we have the risk of a conflict in this region, especially over Taiwan. So I'm always saying to my friends in Taiwan, don't become another Ukraine. Don't become a battleground. And what I say in all seriousness, and I hope they understand, it's sensitive, but I'll say it anyway. Everyone knows Henry Kissinger's famous line that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. Just don't count on the U.S. for your security. For your security, count on your brains, your culture, your decency, your negotiations. Don't count on weapon systems of the U.S., on military alliances. This will never keep anyone safe. This is the main point. And the main thing that alarms me about the world, actually, right now, in addition to the Middle East and Ukraine, is that the U.S. sends arms to Taiwan. I don't believe that makes Taiwan any safer. I think it makes Taiwan a lot more dangerous. My advice to Beijing is do not ship arms to Missouri. Do not arm Texas. Do not arm California. And my advice to Washington is do not arm Taiwan. It's the same thing. Confucius said it well 2,500 years ago, do to others what you would have them do to you. A little Confucian wisdom will save the world. When it comes to Europe, just to say, Europe is in a very strange period. First, Europe is not quite a union, of course. So it is 27 separate countries. Another difference of Europe and China, quite fundamental, is that Emperor Qin unified the writing system 2,200 years ago. Europe never created a common written language Latin served that up until about 476 AD, but after that it was only for the monks. It wasn't for common use. So Europe has, like China, multiple languages, but no common language other than English to some extent. It's not unified. The Constitution of Europe is not quite unified. There is no unified foreign policy. And Europe, to a large extent, A, relied on the United States, and B, was essentially driven by the United States because the U.S. also determined who could govern and who couldn't govern in a lot of places, a lot of times, just in direct interventions, by the way, with an ability to bring up or down politicians. This did not serve Europe well. So Europe has not had strategic autonomy for many decades, and a lot of the politicians are not really European leaders. They are American politicians. And so all of this makes things quite complicated. Europe needs China, by the way, economically. The idea that Europe should follow the United States in a trade war with China is so wrong-headed from Europe's point of view. I find it shocking. And when I say this in Europe, of course, it's not so well received in some places. It is well received in the business community, but not in the political arena. So this is the big problem. China needs, of course, a deft foreign policy, and it's doing a good job on that. But China cannot count on the U.S. market or the European market for growth, first of all. It may be able to convince Europe, don't go over the cliff with the United States, maybe, but it will not be the source of growth for China. So China itself, strategically, macroeconomically, needs to look to all the other regions we've been talking about, even if it can maintain, and it should try, good relations with Europe. Europe is not going to allow massive exports of electric vehicles from China. It's not going to happen. So in this sense, you'll face a protectionist wall in Europe, even with good relations. The market will grow perhaps, but slowly at best. The fast-growing markets are ASEAN, are Africa, are West Asia, and so on. A lot of that will require finance, to come back to that. And so that's where I would place the biggest hopes for the economic dynamism. The market as an institution is extremely important for all that we're talking about. After all, BYD became the world's leading EV manufacturer through the marketplace. Huawei became the lead through the marketplace. LONGi became the lead solar producer through the marketplace. And in each of those cases, by the way, because of this being a recent occurrence in China in the last 40 years, you can name the entrepreneur who was the visionary that built this. For us, in the United States, where the process started 75 years earlier, the inventor is Henry Ford, from the beginning of the 20th century. You have some names, of course, but much of the industry is publicly traded large companies, whereas in China you have actual inventor entrepreneurs throughout the industrial system. We have it mainly in big tech, but not throughout the industrial system, which is older and so on. So I wouldn't discount the market, but the market can produce for lots of things, and the signals that the market follows are profits. And profits can give a completely wrong direction if the profits are to wreck the environment, are to emit greenhouse gases, to destroy ecosystems, and so forth. And so that's where the government is essential. One of the great pieces of government planning in China was the Made in China 2025 program. Really a remarkable project. Freaked out the United States, by the way. Completely freaked out the United States. Because China said a decade ago, here are 10 areas where we want to lead or be co-leader. And you know, in about 8 of them, China has succeeded. So this is a tremendous industrial policy success. But that drove a lot of the industrial direction of the markets. So it is complementarity of government and market. It's not one or the other. In the United States, the ideology is what I was told in my first year economics class: don't worry, the market will solve it. That is a barrier to clear thought. And in this comes, as you know, this is British ideology and philosophy. And Adam Smith was a genius. And even Adam Smith, in the book, in The Wealth of Nations, book 5 is about government role. It's quite a good book, by the way. No one gets that far, even in Adam Smith. But Adam Smith was a little bit complacent, actually. I think he was an incredible genius, and the book is a wonderful book and very well worth reading 250 years later, by the way. It's just interesting and well written and ingenious observations. But he was complacent, and he knew that government had a role to play, but his main point was against mercantilism and empire. He said, trade, don't have empire. Give up the US colonies. It's okay. That's not what makes you rich or poor. And so he had so many right things, but he was fighting a different cause. And he left out a lot of what we really need today. But in the US and British textbooks and mentality, that idea remains. And it became the favored ideology of the American super rich. People like Thiel and Musk and others, they're all libertarians. Well, frankly, when you have $100 billion of net wealth, it's easy to be a libertarian. It's just not very morally impressive to say, leave us alone. And so this is a part of the American syndrome right now. In 10 years, the role of the dollar will be much less. Therefore, Hong Kong's own monetary arrangements will evolve, for sure. The dollar will not be the unexceptional or the unbeatable core of the world monetary system. And the renminbi will have to be convertible, and stablecoin renminbi, digital currencies will become the modes of settlement. So that's also a challenge for the banking sector as well, for being on top of those changes. But I do believe that the renminbi needs to internationalize faster than the current timetable of Beijing, because Trump is basically accelerating that. If the US remained the main market for China, then you could take time. But now there's really a transformation that will take place in world trade. The direction of trade will change a lot, and with the direction of trade, that cannot be dollar financed. It's going to be renminbi financed to a much greater extent. And so that's going to require a different timeline for the PBOC and for that is going to mean 10 years from now, I think, a multi-currency system, and it's going to mean a lot more non-dollar settlements, a lot more non-dollar financing, and historically, what was a long process, it took a long time for sterling to leave the center stage, including 2 world wars. This time it's going to be a lot faster.
中意名家分析，記得俾 like 同埋分享，支持同訂閱卓見名家，最緊要撳埋呢個鐘仔，咁就唔會錯過我哋嘅新片。